Hey everyone, welcome to The Path of Me. I'm your host, Wendy Hutchinson. My guest today has been on my show a couple of times. Her name is Rhianna Mays. She's trained as a Holy Fire 3 Reiki Master. She's an Access Bars practitioner, but her healing has really evolved this year. She's now doing all these miraculous healings, working with Christ Energy and so many amazing results are being seen from her work. So welcome, Rhianna Mays. Thank you for coming and joining me today.
Thanks for having me again, Wendy. I'm happy to be here.
You're such a great guest. I love having you on. We were just recently talking about a couple things. We were talking about how sometimes people actually resist healing.
Yeah.
I wanted to have you give me your thoughts on that, because it's such an interesting concept, because we always think people want to heal.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially if they're coming to you and they're paying for it, you
Right.
just assume they want to heal. What I'm finding with now that I've started to channel Christ Energy, and we can talk about how that kind of came about, because that's been since like November. But what I'm finding is the deeper you go into the subconscious or cellular programming or cellular memory, there is at times resistance. And so, if people aren't actually ready to let go of something, or maybe they've built their identity around being this way or feeling a certain way, then there is more resistance. And sometimes when you're just working on a cellular level, you aren't physically or consciously aware of what's actually happening,
Okay.
So people will do a session and they're like, okay, I'm not really sure what just happened, and they think it was maybe a waste of time or a waste of money or a waste of energy. And then what's happening is that they are getting next steps activated for them, or gifts are turning on. I'm finding that I'm an activator of their true potential and their highest vibration possible. However, they're not really connecting the dots because it doesn't in that moment happen. But we have to get into the cellular, memory. We have to get into the programming that they've been taught. And then it's just this like seed being planted that's growing and blossoming. And so I think a lot of the times, maybe healers in general don't get the credit. I mean, it's not about getting credit, but people don't recognize what actually happened because it's so deep and so profound that it takes time. Because if they just woke up tomorrow and was like, bam, there's enough going on energetically that I don't think a lot of people would be able to handle that. So, one example of a situation, she wasn't resistant to it, but she was not convinced that I actually did anything. was, I live in Omaha, Nebraska, and I've got a girlfriend in Kansas City, and we grew up playing softball together. And we reconnected on Facebook like 9 months ago, and she had seen some of my posts about some of the, experiences I was having healing other people. And she reached out to me and she's like, hey, can you heal trauma, specifically fear of flying? She had an experience, a very profound, very scary experience on an airplane when she was in college. And even the thought, 20 years later, even the thought of getting on an airplane made her break out into hives, and she would have an anxiety attack, and she would have to take like long naps just to like get out of that mode. And she kind of asked me jokingly, can you heal that? And I was like, yep, we can go after that. And she's like, okay. So she booked a session, and I did a full hour remote. And then she called, I called her after, and she's like, okay, thanks. She said she didn't feel anything.
A little bit of a skeptic, right? Like,
totally a skeptic.
I just wasted some money and took a power nap for an hour, but thanks anyways, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and we know a couple people like that we've talked about, just mutual people. We know that we're just like, nothing happened. But we're seeing profound changes, right? So,
Right.
so then she called me the next day and she's like, Rhianna, I have a really bad headache. I'm like, drink more water, And then she called me 3 days later. I still have a headache and I just need to sleep all the time. And then she called me a week later. I'm still sleeping and I still have a headache. And I was just like, this isn't normal. It wasn't a normal reaction, right? Normally people have a headache, they drink more water and it's fine. And I said, just hang in there because something deep and profound is happening to you. Just hang in there. And then finally after 2 weeks, she's like, okay, I feel much better. And then within 2 weeks, she booked a flight and had gone to Chicago with some friends and her husband and tagged me.
That's huge.
Huge. And she had this big smile on the airplane and there wasn't like an ounce of fear in her. And so it's just a really good example of,
I hope she wrote a testimonial for you.
She totally did. She even did a live video. It was
awesome.
Great. But yeah, so it's just an example of, when we're undoing fear programming and trauma, it isn't going to necessarily show up immediately. But it is profound, but you have to be willing to heal
let it go and heal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. I started during about a year ago, during my sessions, I always ask, do I have permission to touch? And they say yes. And then just before we get started, I say, do I have permission to do this healing? And I noticed that if they say yes out loud, it's like the conscious body, the conscious mind, and the subconscious all get on the same page, and there's less resistance. So I was noticing less energy being kicked back at me, or the subconscious, I could feel it like running. Like, what is this? Who is this? What are you doing? And so when I've asked that question, do I have permission? There's way less resistance and everybody's on board. But there's still times where people just don't want to heal. And I don't even know if Jesus Christ himself could heal you if you don't actually want to be healed, right? Like, you're going to hold on to this. It's your identity.
Absolutely. I think there's a level of surrender that has to take place where you're ready to turn this over and release it.
Yeah.
And also, going back to the actual sessions, a lot of people, when deep emotional healing is happening for you, and this for the audience, your team is going to put you down because it would be so traumatic for you to actually witness, feel, experience in real time what has been done to you. You almost have to be anesthetized to some degree to handle the deep work that is being done.
I completely agree.
Yeah. People think they're getting this, that nothing's happening when the most profound and deep energetic work is happening.
Yeah.
And it's hard to explain to somebody who's not familiar with energy work.
I can usually tell on the clients who fall asleep and they feel like it was a 5-minute session. They're like, what? It's time to be done already?
Right.
And I'm like, yeah. Call it taken offline. Like, your team literally took you offline, potentially even removed like your consciousness and your soul so the physical body could heal without you being aware. So I've experienced that several times. And that is usually the most profound healing, because you're right. You've already lived through that trauma once. You can't possibly handle it again. And that's not what, I come from a place of love and compassion. And so putting you through that trauma again is not loving or compassionate. So your team's going to take you offline. You're going to have zero clue what just happened. But then all of a sudden, new gifts will come online, or you'll have new awarenesses, like light bulb moments. And it's because of that healing and the journey that you're about to go on.
And also sometimes I think probably people will experience shifts and changes and not even relate them to the session that they had, because it could happen. Like your client had something specific with flying. So she was very aware This happened, and there was this shift, and now she can fly. I mean, that's so pivotal and profound. It was so obvious.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's real subtle things that shift, and they're actually very powerful, but they're so subtle that the person is not going to relate it back to the energy work.
Yeah.
If they hadn't, that's fine too, because
Yeah.
you know, the whole point is to give people a better quality of life and help them on their journey.
Exactly.
But there could be a complete lack of awareness that, oh, that had something to do with that session 3 weeks ago or a month ago, because so much time has passed, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And that's okay. It's their journey. And that's, you know, I'm profoundly aware of what happened with my very first Reiki session ever. I mean, it was very profound, and I left feeling like a different person. But I know for the large majority, they can't handle that big of a change. So again, to come from a compassionate place, it is a very slow blossoming, you know. So
yeah, for sure. And I think also you're evolving as a healer. Your healing has really become more powerful. And what you're bringing in for people and the results you're seeing.
Yeah. Is it okay if I share the story of how that happened?
Sure.
Okay.
Of course.
So as you mentioned, I'm a Holy Fire 3 Reiki master, and I teach Reiki certification classes and offer healing, and I do it full time, and it's been great for me. I've been able to thrive as a mother and a single woman. So it's been such a blessing. And I always tell people I go to work, but it doesn't feel like work. It's fun and magical, and you know, so but it was like November of last year, November of 18, about that I was doing a Reiki session on a client, and I could see in the corner an energetic outline, and they often just are outlines. They don't look like, I don't know, they don't look like a human would, right? It's hard to explain, but it's just an energetic outline. And it was a bunch of angels, like a collective, and they said, Rhianna, you are limiting yourself with Reiki. And I was like, excuse me? You know, because Holy Fire 3 is the highest, you know, it's the highest energy that we know of in Reiki. And they're like, yeah, you're limiting yourself with just Reiki. You're actually a miraculous healer. And I'm in the middle of a session, and I'm, you know, doing my Reiki thing on this client, and I was like, oh, like Jesus. And I was totally snarky about it. And I gave him kind of an attitude because I grew up in the church, and Jesus is my guy, and like, he's the ultimate, right? And no, I'm not associated with the church anymore, and don't love the control and the dogma and all that, but Jesus is my man. And so I was totally sarcastic about it. Oh, like Jesus. And they were like, yes, exactly. And it took me, and I'll be honest with you, it took me a good 30 days to just even wrap my brain around the fact that I had that in me. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
So it took me a while, and I really struggled with this idea. And I think a lot of people can relate to this. We are taught that ego is like, I'm so great, and I'm a miraculous healer, and I'm going to help the world. Like, that's ego, right? But I think we have it totally backwards and actually need to flip the script on this. It's where ego, like that ego was keeping you safe. That's its entire job. And it doesn't know what my life is going to look like as a channeler of Christ energy, or if I start to, you know, teach large groups of people. Like, it doesn't know what that life looks like, and so it's going to keep me small to keep me confined to what it already knows. And I really felt like I had to go deep, Wendy, and I know we had a couple conversations, but I had to go really deep about who the F am I to think I'm a miraculous healer. Like, it was, and then I kept saying, no, like, I know this.
There's a resistance sometimes to your greatness, because What does that look like if you claim it? What does that mean, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I mean, even like if my parents found out, I'm now saying I channel Christ healing energy and miraculous things are happening. They're going to be like, what? You know, so there was a lot of resistance to me even saying that I'm channeling Christ energy. Like only Christ could do that. And so it was funny because when I was having these conversations in my head and like resisting my true purpose and my true path, thinking that that was ego to accept it, when actually it was my ego trying to keep me small. They finally said, this collective was like, Rhianna, listen, if Jesus was a man who came here with a mission and a message and a purpose, and he channeled a particular energy. And if you want to call it Christ energy, go right ahead, but you need to begin channeling that energy. And I was like, okay, then. And again, that goes back against my teachings because, Jesus is not just a man with a message. And so I really had to dive deep, and Jesus himself was like, Rhianna, and Emma talks about this in her channeling of Jesus, like only 5% of the Bible is accurate. And we are asking you to channel this energy because there's purpose and it's your life path. And so I finally just gave in and was like, okay, but I did ask for help. Like I asked for help. How do I say this? How do I introduce it? And then I just was like, you know what? I'm just going to own this. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to own it. And I've had very little
resistance
from other people. And I think it's because they see it in me before I actually saw it in myself, because not to my face or publicly has anybody ever gone, oh, really? You channel? And I tell people, it's just, I think anybody can do it. It's just aligning with it, right?
Well, I think you also have to hold a certain frequency to access a certain frequency.
Completely.
It is available to every single person. But are they in alignment? Are they energetically holding that frequency consistently enough to access those higher vibrational energies?
Yeah.
Not a lot of people are, to be honest.
Well, and I just, when I explain it to even my students when I'm teaching Reiki certification classes, I'm like, I'm teaching you the foundation and the basics, but you're going to go on your own journey and you're going to evolve. And it might lead to something totally different, but this has been my evolution, is aligning with Christ energy. And, another example just since channeling this is I had a client who came in. First of all, she publicly credits me for healing her breast cancer. I don't feel comfortable taking credit for all of that, but I will say that we kept her incredibly healthy and well and strong. And her hair is like super luscious. And I know that's like part of what I did, but she also had neuropathy where she couldn't type on a computer. You couldn't read her handwriting. She admittedly said she hasn't felt the floor in years because her nerves were so damaged and dead. And I remember like a month after really beginning to channel this Christ energy and practicing with it, I said, can I just try something on you? And she's like, sure. So I called forth the energy, the source of the energy of neuropathy. And it was two different emotions, like rejection and resentment or something like that. I know the first one was rejection. And I called forth that energy and I surrounded it with this Christ energy and I healed it. And then I sent Christ energy through like every single crevice of her body, every cell, every organ, and I required it to vibrate higher. And within 1 hour, she got off the floor and could feel her feet. Like she could feel the floor. And she was like stunned. And a week later, she sent me a picture of her handwriting and you could read her handwriting. And 2 weeks later, she sent me a message that she was typing on the computer. And so I think this isn't just about me. I think a lot of us are really capable of these types of miracles. It's just getting out of our head that only one man could do it and and
Mm-hmm.
you know, that we're capable of it if we align with it, and our vibration is a match, you know.
It's a huge, deep program to release.
Huge.
Because this is it's actually a cellular program. It's so deep in our DNA, that resistance, and many lifetimes of being conditioned and programmed that
Yeah.
we are not capable of self-healing. We are not capable of ascension, what we know to be ascension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People don't have a foundation to build on when it comes to that, because their foundation is this program of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And not being enough, and always having to look outside themselves to find healing, find truth, find answers, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I really do believe that every person can access the things that you and I have.
I completely agree. And I think it starts with easy things like, you know, there's still so many people that don't believe or are not aware that their own thoughts, their own emotions create either disease or wellness.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, we're talking so basic, right? And then they don't believe that plant medicine works, or that essential oils is effective, or, you know, meditating is, you know, should be in your medicine cabinet. You know what I mean? Like it's medicine, right? So people, it's, you know, and that's just why I wake up every day. It's like, who could I inspire today? And I don't go about my day to change anybody's mind, because I just don't have that much energy to like fight against that type of resistance.
Right.
I want to save my energy for the clients that actually find me and want me. But I do consider myself a seed planter, you know, like every single day. It's like, but this is effective.
You're definitely a teacher. I think you're definitely planting seeds with your clients, and you're planting seeds by posting and being vulnerable on your Facebook page.
Oh yeah, I'm a wide open book.
You're an open book, that's for sure.
You know, but I do that because I think we don't give each other permission to be truly authentic. And so
if people relate to it, because people, when you're suffering, you feel so isolated in your suffering, and you think, I'm the only person going through this emotional trauma and this self-doubt and these worthiness stories. And when people suffer, they tend to isolate, you know, and shut down and really believe all that. It's all bullshit. It's really not true. None of it's true.
Yeah, no.
But what you believe is true. So if you believe it, then that's your truth. That's the reality you're going to create.
And that's what shows up every time. And then you're like, look, I have proof. And it's like, they don't even realize that they
don't realize that their vibration is sending a ripple, an energetic signature out into the world, and a frequency. And everything that comes back is going to be in direct resonance with that. That's a truth. There's a direct echo to the frequency you're holding, and you're going to bring back the exact experiences that are going to validate the frequency that you're in. So they are going, I think, and there's a lack of awareness around that.
Yeah, it's about just admitting that you have that much power. I think that's a hard thing for a lot of people.
That's huge.
Yeah. Like I personally am still trying to overcome the frequency I'm putting out about prosperity. Like I have a deep-seated belief that it doesn't just materialize out of thin air, even though I have knowing that I was part of creating sacred geometry. And so it's incredibly frustrating for me to not be able to go, and here's $50,000 because I know on some level I'm capable of that.
You know who you are on a soul level, energetic level, on a higher level. You know who you are as your higher self, your highest aspect of self. You know.
Yeah.
And so you you hold that and you know that is you, and yet living in this reality here on earth, you're like, and why isn't this translating immediately?
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I believe things are happening always in the now. So it is happening right now. You may not be accessing it in linear time, but it's already complete. It's already done.
Yeah.
Waiting for you. Sometimes there's a linear time construct that we have to navigate, because time on earth is linear.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like time is speeding up.
It's absolutely.
I feel like it's an acceleration of timelines. I don't know if you feel that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the summer felt like maybe 3 weeks. And I think a lot of people are noticing that. And that is in direct correlation to the energy coming in. Like everybody, even if they're hiding under a rock, is being affected by the energy coming
Absolutely.
in.
Whether you're conscious or unconscious.
Yeah. They are being asked to raise their vibration, and things are falling away. And I think right now a lot of people are just resisting the life they've created and the people they've surrounded themselves with. But more and more people are recognizing, you know, I don't actually find joy in this person anymore. And it's okay to like let them go, and or just move along your own path, and it'll just fall away naturally. And
absolutely.
And women in general, I think, are being asked right now to create more boundaries.
There's absolutely an awakening of consciousness.
Absolutely.
There's a huge spectrum, of course. Mm-hmm. But I absolutely agree with you that women are shifting in very powerful ways. What are you seeing? What do you feel is happening around you?
So it's, you know, it's common, maybe it's not common knowledge in our world. I believe it is the divine feminine woke up first, and she's shifting first to help undo the old ways, the old patterns, the old patriarchy. And it's not that men are bad, but we are just going to do it a different way. And I think because men have been asked for so long not to express emotion and to be strong and to shove all that down, it's quite possible that they have even more healing than maybe we're aware of, or that we even acknowledge. And so maybe we need to be really strong and ascended higher and vibrating higher before they can actually come online. But I would say like 92% of my clients are female. Mm-hmm. I've only had one male Reiki certificate student so far. It's all been female. Mm-hmm. And they really are feeling the call to get past their old programming and to
That's beautiful.
Feel it. I think you call it the avian call. They feel it. They feel their soul is like, oh, you've got to help, and you're here right now to help. And so the women are absolutely noticing that and answering the call in huge ways. And I think sometimes they forget too, because then we have this pressure like, okay, I'm awake and I'm seeing angel numbers, and you know, my old fear programming I'm being aware that there's fear programming.
Huge.
Yeah. And then they think they have to like be a healer or open a studio of some sort and like serve people. But what they don't realize is just by them raising their vibration and the emittance that they're putting out, like you would mention, they're impacting other people's vibration around them just by being them, but focusing on their own vibration. And that is one of the, I don't know, that might be the most powerful way to be a light worker, is to
it is
vibration so that you
it is others. That's how you create impact, is by changing and alchemizing yourself.
Yeah.
That's the most powerful. Why is that? Because people in your family are going to entrain to that new vibration. Mm-hmm. They're going to set an example as you walk through this world. People are going to notice how you navigate challenges, how you are responding to life in a more elevated way. Mm-hmm. Also, as your vibration raises, you're going to start creating more harmony. and more alignment and more peace in your life. That's what ascension does. It takes you to a higher vibrational place, which translates into, experiences and relationships that match that.
Yeah.
So as you ascend and go higher, your life becomes less drama filled. Those things start to fall away. Those relationships start to fall away. And it can feel like destruction.
Well, a lot of people describe that as loneliness. I think a lot of light workers feel very lonely. Mm-hmm. And I actually look around and I'm like, this is peace. This is what peace looks like, right? So.
Mm-hmm. But also people have to realize part of this process is shedding and releasing everything that no longer serves you. That could mean your husband. And it could be traumatic. There's emotional impact, financial impact, emotional impact on your children. It's chaotic. It's destruction in a way. But sometimes you have to clear and level everything in order to create the things that are going to be in alignment and resonance with who you are becoming, which is far greater.
I couldn't agree more. And actually, I went through a divorce. I remember waking up one morning and knew I had to do something and I had to heal something, but I didn't know what that was. I couldn't articulate it. And then I left my ex-husband. I moved out with like a bed, a dresser, and $500. I mean, I had like very little. And moved out, and then within like 9-10 months I woke up and it was like bam, and I know that had I been in that environment I wouldn't have been able to go through that. And so for me it was, I couldn't articulate it, I had no idea why, but I knew I needed to go. And he's such a great guy anyway, like he is a good guy and he's engaged and getting married and he's way happier. So now he understands, like he got engaged. I'm like, aren't you happy now that we got divorced? Like he's in alignment now with who can divorce him, Right. So I think there is a lot of fear, but I'm seeing more and more people asking questions like, how can I be surrounded by things that bring me joy? And so just that awareness right there is huge. Mm-hmm.
Huge. And also, it takes courage. It takes courage to stand in your alignment, especially for women, because we're so used to pleasing and making sure everybody's happy and putting ourselves last.
Yeah.
So for us to say, this isn't working for me, and I need to change this aspect of my life, and it might not just be in a relationship. It could be a job or career. It could be moving to a new city. It requires taking a risk of some sort.
Yeah. And what I found when you take that risk is you are supported. If you're taking a risk to higher vibrate and to align with your true soul's path, whatever that may be, you are going to be supported in miraculous ways. Like, I mean, I cannot even tell you how I paid rent for the first 2 years I got divorced, but every time it was taken care of, and there's still fear, and I still go through times where I have to make priority decisions because I don't see how rent's going to make it this month, but it always shows up.
It always shows up for you every time. Every time.
It's not just rent, but like, I don't know why, but like keeping a roof over my kid's head is like a core fear of mine. And so, but every time you're just like, what? And I think we talked about this the last time, but for some reason it has to come up again. It's like the minute I just say, okay, I literally, like, I don't see how this is going to work out. I don't understand how it's going to happen. I'm just going to like, it's almost like, have fun with this because I can't anymore, and I don't see how we're gonna fix it, So
well, there's a level of trust and surrender.
Yeah,
that's what I was talking about, where you kind of get to that point where you're like, okay, I'm just gonna take my hands off the wheel and see how this plays out, and it does work out.
And I still keep asking people, I'm like, does anybody have like a 101 for dummies on how to surrender? Because I'm such a recovering control freak that I'm like, the only way for me to surrender truly and not like think about it, even though I know they've got it and they're working on it, is just to go to sleep. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed now.
We've had that conversation.
For sure. So, but I just want to share, I guess I'm only talking about it because, people look at me. I had a friend tell me the other day that people look at me and they're jealous because I exuberate joy and I have children and I built this business. And it's like, has anybody not been paying attention to like all the shit show stories I've been sharing? Because it hasn't been pretty the whole time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's why I am such an open book, is to encourage people to be authentic and trust. And it's not going to be pretty. And like we've talked about, diving into the shadow aspects, the things you judge, that you hate, about yourself, that is not sunshine and rainbows. And that's, I think, where a lot of people are right now, is diving into the darkness.
It feels like the concept of spirituality for a long time was this rainbow and unicorn that, it was defined as this blissful connection and this life of ease, and there's no struggle and there's no darkness, and if you don't see it, it doesn't exist. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, I'm here to tell you that that's not the case.
Yeah.
Evolving, which is what a spiritual journey is, it's the evolution of your soul. It's the raising of yourself vibrationally, energetically, on a frequency standpoint. That requires you to feel a lot of darkness and process and release these shadow aspects and these deep emotional things in your life that are painful. There's no rainbows there, man.
Yeah.
It's like you're in the dark and you're fighting for your life.
Yeah.
You're fighting through
the dark, the dark night of the soul.
It's very, very hard, and it's no joke, man. I mean, it brings you down, brings you to your knees, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a temporary place. It's not the place you want to get stuck and dwell in.
Yeah.
But it's a necessary experience in order to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't really know how to navigate that. And I
no, they don't.
But for me, like when negative emotion comes up, I mean, I look square at it, and of course there's moments where it's overwhelmed, but I look at it and I'm like, what do I need to know right now? What is this? Like, what are you telling me? What do I need to let go of? What do I need to know? I just ask it questions until finally awareness starts to creep in.
Right.
And sometimes it's not like in the moment I'm getting answers. Sometimes it's I have to trudge through the crap. But
absolutely, you have to feel it. I think also you have to sit with it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be in it.
Yeah.
And that's the key, because most people want to run from it, bury it, deny it, avoid it,
medicate it,
put the Band-Aid on, fix it, but not doing the work to fix it. They want someone else to fix it for them.
Mm-hmm.
So having the courage to really ask those questions, and it always comes back to us, because everything happening in our lives is an experience we've created for our own soul growth.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to ask the question, what is this about for me, and why am I so emotionally triggered right now?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the key question. What is this about for me? And it's not about the issue. It's way deeper always.
Yeah.
The issue is just really shining a light on that little aspect of self that needs healing.
Well, just an example of that is like, I love and adore my kids, and everyone that knows me knows that they're like the biggest triggers for me. and one especially is just like me, and it's like, ah! So
I have one.
When I totally lose it, it always comes back to a lack of, or a loss of control. So like if I'm angry and screaming, and I can take a moment and go, okay, what's really going on here? It's always a loss or lack of control. And so I think if people just sort of, honor that they're going through that, but then really ask, like, what is this about? Like, what do I need to know right now? I think people would get through that faster. And then I just want to challenge other awakened people on the journey to not, I know people are really private and they think I'm just weird because I'm such an open book, but how many more people would be served by their story that they dove into the darkness, and this is what it looked like, and this is how it felt, and this is how I overcame it or came out the other side. Sometimes I see people who are just, oh, love and light and sunshine and rainbows, and I don't know, I have this reaction.
I think once you actually open the door, because that door, that love and light door, is burying and hiding a lot of deeper stuff that's not being allowed to be expressed or examined because it's too painful. And every single person is exactly where they need to be. So if you're a unicorn and rainbow person, that's exactly where you need to be right now, and I honor you for being there. But coming out the other side, after doing the deep inner work, you're going to see a quantum jump in your evolution. If you are able to really face yourself and face your demons and face the darkness. And you don't have to do it alone. There's a lot of people like Rhianna and myself who are available to support people through these things. It's not something you have to navigate alone, although a lot of us have navigated it alone. Rhianna, I know you've done the work yourself. I've certainly done the work myself, because it is our own personal journey. But there are people out there to support the process and help you navigate it for sure.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. There's such a wide spectrum. And I think more people are willing to open that door and are starting to feel energetically a pull or a call to heal themselves, or not, if not consciously heal themselves, an awareness, like you were saying, around things that do not resonate. And that's an awakening step, just awareness. Self-awareness.
I'm noticing, almost in every single woman I'm interacting with, whether it's personally or in a healing session, women are being asked right now to create boundaries, to create parameters in which they feel comfortable working within without giving too much of themselves, or the self-sacrifice. But what do they need? What does that look like? If you want to keep a relationship that's not so great, but that's okay, because again, that's where we're at right now. But what are the parameters in which you meet? Okay, we can hang out, but we're not going to talk about this subject. Or I have a hairdresser friend who was like, I think I'm going to post a sign that says positive conversations only, please. Because everybody just comes in there and just bitch and moan.
You kind of throw up on her as she's doing their hair.
Yes, and she's just like, I don't want to hear about this all day long. So I think creating boundaries and receiving help is a huge message right now for women. It's like, and then so many people are like, but how do I create a boundary? And it's like, just take one concept at a time, or one relationship, and really define for yourself, like, what do you want this to look like? How would it feel good? What doesn't feel good? What feels good? And then communicate those. And then if they don't like it, then, they're going to, but we just have to create boundaries. And
I think people don't realize that setting boundaries is essential for self-love and self-respect.
Absolutely.
It's respecting yourself enough to say, I will not tolerate this and you will not cross this line with me.
Yeah.
Self-respect and unconditional love does not mean you're a doormat.
Yeah. But we've been programmed to be kind and friendly, and smile more, and you know what I mean? So
yeah, but it took a long time for me personally to realize that boundaries mean I respect myself enough not to tolerate this bullshit anymore. And being firm in that boundary. Not only am I going to set that boundary, I mean it.
Yeah.
So you cross that line, then there's a consequence for that.
Yep. And it's okay. It's okay to do that. We have to, I think that's the next big thing for women is to release the programming that they don't have to be kind and gentle and sweet all the time. If their boundaries are being crossed, or they have given so much that they're creating disease in their body because their life force is almost completely gone.
I feel like that's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother, that's an hour-long conversation right there that we'll have to have at a future point. But boundaries are so important. Rhianna, this has been such a beautiful conversation. I knew once we got started, we'd have too much to talk about and not enough time.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you. And thank you for what you're doing to raise awareness and plant seeds for others.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Is there anything you want to share before we say goodbye to this beautiful audience? Any words of wisdom you want to share or feel compelled to speak before we close our conversation?
No, I think we said a lot, and I think if people need me, they'll find me, or they'll find who they do need. But you know, like we said, going inside and really getting quiet. Oh, so many answers I found just in the silence, you know. So
absolutely. Where can people find you? What's your web address? I'll put it below.
So Rhianna Mays, and I'm at ReikiHealingAndIntuition.com. They can email me at RhiannaAt ReikiHealingAndIntuition.com. And I do remote sessions for anybody that is wanting it and not in Omaha. So thanks.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Rhianna, for joining me today. It's always a pleasure. Hopefully people will take some of your ideas and messages to heart, because it really has helped you personally on your journey, and I know it will help them. So to my audience, thank you so much for joining us. I love you all. Be kind to yourselves, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.